العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So inshallah, last week we covered dama'ir and asma, like how dama'ir work with asma, muttasila, munfasila. Like if you say ana Muslim, you know, you're saying I am a Muslim, you're using a pronoun of I, but this is munfasila, yani huwa Muslim. This is again, now you have huwa separate and then Muslim as an ism. Like in kitabuhu, now this is muttasila. It is bittisal, it is connected. It's still a damir being used with an ism. طيب? Today I want to discuss a little bit about af'al and dama'ir. Because in lugha, that's the two things that we're going to be dealing with the most. You're going to deal with asma and dama'ir, and you're going to be dealing with af'al and dama'ir. And how you use a damir with a fi'l is very different than how you use it with an ism. So when you look at af'al, the way you change them, it shows who you're speaking about. So you don't have to say, for example, in English, you say, he opened the door. طيب? He is separate, opened is separate, door is separate. Fatah al-bab, if we say Fatah al-bab. Now here, I didn't have to say huwa Fatah al-bab. Just by saying Fataha, in the way that I said it, shows that it's in the past. It shows that it was a male. It shows that it is somebody who's not there. So I didn't have to say he or she or they. Just the way the word is structured tells you the damir. And that's very important. Because when you look at, many times in the Quran, when you look at a fi'l, the fa'il may not be named clearly, but rather the way the fi'l is mentioned shows you who the fa'il is. And if you don't understand this, then you will misunderstand many ayat of Quran. You will not know who is speaking and who is being spoken to, because it will not say huwa and hiya every time. Sometimes with tawqeed, sometimes the way it is, but a lot of times with af'al it will just come like this. Tayyib. Another important thing, when you go to most madrasas, if you go to like a lot of the Afghanistan, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and that part of the world, what do? They start you what's called gardan. They just start you with fa'ala, fa'alu, fa'alunna, like you have to memorize these tenses. And they tell you, don't worry about what it means. Don't worry about what it, just memorize them. Just sit there and go fa'ala, fa'alu, fa'alunna, na 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 na, and you say it over and over and over and over, and then later on you kind of put things together. But there's a problem with that method of teaching. And the problem is that if you hit a tense that you're not used to, that doesn't fit that base method, you won't know how to make jama' of it. You will not know how to make, like if it's not thulathi mujarrad, when you hit ruba'i, when you hit something that is unusual, you won't be able to go with it. And not understanding what you're saying doesn't really make sense to me. Like you have to understand what I'm saying. You have to understand why I'm memorizing what I'm memorizing, why I'm learning what I'm learning, and how can I use it. And that's why you see a lot of brothers who may know Nahu really well, but if you speak to them in Arabic, they can't speak. Why? Because they never understood why the Nahu tense is the way it is and how to use it in their regular life. On the other hand, you might find brothers who are fluent in speaking Arabic, but they don't understand Nahu at all. They just learned it by speaking on the street or taking classes on how to speak. That doesn't benefit either, because then in the end you don't understand the depth of the Quran and Sunnah that Nahu and Sarf and Balagha is supposed to teach you. So in a balanced approach, inshallah, I'm going to ask you guys to memorize these tenses, but I want you to understand what they are, how they're referring to, and then use them in your regular life. You know, I'm not going to give you guys homework like the past, like make 50 sentences in this. Instead, your homework is going to be, take all of these tenses and try to use them in a conversation with somebody. Whether it's with each other from the students in the class or with somebody else that you may know. But try to use each one of them in a sentence, speaking to somebody. Make a mistake. Don't be ashamed or don't be shy to make mistakes. You will only learn when you take that risk of making a mistake. Tayyib, I put a F next to some of them that are female. I mean, there is many ways to organize a chart. I mean, there is one way to try to do it in a way where you put all the female tenses on one side and male on one side, or put all the mukhatab together and the ghaib together. But inshallah, this will be a good way. I've put that, we'll discuss it anyway, but for people that take pictures and things. Tayyib, there is al-madi, and if you write with al, you should put al-madi with a ya. But if you write it without the al, it's madin, and al-mudari', or even without the al, you write it the same way. Tayyib, madin is past tense, and mudari' is present tense. We discussed fi'l amr and fi'l mustaqbil earlier, but we're going to discuss these two regularly used tenses when we talk about damair. So, the first thing when we talk about somebody who is ghaib, yani somebody's not here. So, if you want to talk about Aina Muhammad, فنقول Muhammad huwa fi Misr. For example, if somebody says, where is Muhammad? We say Muhammad, he is in Misr. So now, we're not talking to Muhammad directly, we're talking about somebody named Muhammad. So, when we look at ghaib, this is the tense we're using. Now, when we talk about af'al, then we're talking about actions. So either you are doing an action or you've already done an action. Either somebody's doing an action or they've done an action. I've used fataha, it's thulathi, mujarrad, and it's different than fa'ala. Everybody uses fa'ala, but I want you to start using other af'al as well. You know, every Arabic dars, you always go fa'ala, or daraba, fa'ala, daraba. I want to start using some different ones to get some practice, inshallah. So, when we talk about ghaib, and you're talking about huwa, we discussed huwa. What does huwa mean? He, right? Or him, I could do it that way. So, when you're saying in past tense, you will use the perfect tense. Now there is khilaf between, ulama of nahu, when you get into falsafa of nahu, about whether the original was muda'ara or madi, but the stronger opinion is the original is madi. That's the original tense. And the base tense is always huwa. Yani, if you want to talk about the base of fa'ala, use fa'ala, which is madi, ghaib, lihuwa. Tayyib? If you want to say daraba, that's your root, where the word comes from, that is past. And it is for huwa. Not even for me or you. It's actually for him. That is in Arabic your base tense. So when you talk about sarf, or looking at the way prefixes and suffixes and that kind of word changes happen in Arabic, you always go back to the original, and the original is going to be the past tense for huwa. So here, when we say, for example, fataha, to open or to be victorious, if we say fataha ash-Sham, like Sham was made victorious or opened, and we say Salahuddin, or if we say another Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, or another Sahabi who may have gone to take care of Sham, or Khalid bin Walid. So here you would say fataha, this will be your fi'l, and then your fa'il will be the name of whoever it is, right? So fataha Khalidu, right? That's your fa'il. Ash-Shama, Ash-Sham will be your maf'ul bihi. But when you're using a pronoun, right? When you have already discussed that we're discussing the life of Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu. Now you're not going to say Fataha Khalid Buldan, Fataha Khalid Sham, Fataha Khalid Iraq, Fataha. It's not the way you use language. It shows that your Arabic is weak because you're not able to throw pronouns in. Like when you're writing in English, and if I said Ahmad came to class, and Ahmad's a great student, and Ahmad was taking notes, and Ahmad went to get a drink, you'd be like, what's wrong with you? Just say Ahmad came to class, and he's a great student, and he was taking notes, and he went to get a drink. You see, you throw the pronoun in. So now, when we have already discussed who we are discussing, who the fa'il is, then you will say, if you say Man fatha ماذا فعل Khalid fi Sham, Fataha Sham. When you just said that, I didn't mention Khalid, and I didn't have to say Huwa Fataha Sham. You could for emphasis, but you don't have to. If I just said Fataha, then now we know that we're talking about the past, and we're talking about a man, and we're talking about a person who's not there at that time. طيب? Understand?
Yes.
So this is important to understand, because this way you don't sound like somebody, like, you know, some brothers who learn English and they don't know English well, they're like, and then the pen was writing on the wall and I was for the saying that the night is the cold. Like, don't throw the everywhere. You don't have to throw it like that. It's the same thing in Arabic. When you don't understand this tenses, then you're going to sound like that. So think about that. Now when you go and have a conversation, use this for somebody not there. طيب ماذا فعل عثمان في باكستان؟ كتب الكتاب. Right? كتب كتاب. يعني now you don't have to say عثمان كتب الكتاب. Like, don't sound awkward like that. Start to use it where you will now understand that who is being referred to. Right? Now, if we're talking about مضارع, present, how will we change it from مضارع? يفتح. يفتح. Now, you will see in مضارع, all of these, until the end, you will see either a ta or a ya. And these are some of the signs when you don't know a fi'l and you're trying to figure out whether it's مضارع or madi, you will look for these signs. If they begin with a ya or a ta, most likely, now there are exceptions to everything, most likely we're talking about something that is مضارع, it's not madi. طيب? And that's why many times you will see a fi'l, sometimes in its essence it will have a letter, but when you change it, the letter drops. Because the rules of Nahu dictate certain things. And inshallah we'll get to that in more advanced classes. But when you see a or noon, this is another thing that is showing something that is in mudari'. But if you look at madi, in the beginning you see all of them begin with the actual letter that the word begins with. Right? They all actually, they don't have a ya or a ta or a or a na before it. طيب. So, if we're talking about ghaib, madi, and somebody who's a male, a single male, we're talking about fataha. If we're talking about mudari', what do we say? Not everybody at once, man. Come on. Yaftahu. Tayyib?
I said it.
Excellent. Now, if you're talking about two people, right? What did we do here now? Fataha. We added an alif. Now, when we go to the mudari' of it, what do we do here? Yaftahani.
That's what I said, yaftahani.
Excellent. So, you added an alif and noon. The alif and noon, we use this in asma as well. Rajul, rajulani. Right? And now I'm making, even though I could say rajulan, I'm pronouncing the kasra here to make a point. And that's something you do in Arabic. Even though regularly in Arabic, you make sukoon where you stop. But many times, to make idhar, to show what you're talking about. For example, if you're speaking to a man, you say anta. You can say ant. Right? If you're speaking about a woman or to a woman, many times you will say anti. You will not just say ant. Because you're making clear which i'rab is being used. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like sometimes when you make idhar of the i'rab in the end, brothers think that you don't know where to make sukoon, and that's not the case. Especially when you look at, for example, poetry. If you look at the Nooniyah of Ibn al-Qayyim, many times he doesn't actually end with a noon but with tanween. And you have to pronounce the tanween because it has to match the noon sound. So understand that many times you will make izhar or clear pronunciation of the i'rab or the tashkil on the last letter to show what you're talking about. Regularly you don't. You don't say salatu or things like this. You just say salah. But when you have a reason, you do. Tayyib. Yaftahani, this is for two. And the damir with that would be huma. Tayyib. If you're talking about a lot of people, jama, which would be hum for their damir, in the madi sense, how would you say it? Fatahu. And you have the alif, and usually you will find a sukoon as it's written on the alif. To show that this is not for other reasons, it's actually to show i'rab. and you will find the Quran a lot. But the mudari will be how? Yaftahuna. Now, if we talked about making this as a fi'l, majroor, or not, they can't be majroor, but mansoob or marfu', we'll talk about hadf al-noon and ithbat al-noon, but inshallah that will be a later dars. Right now, we just want to see its original state. Now, what is the damir connected to that? Hum. Tayyib. Now, we talk about mukhatib. Ghaib, somebody who's not there. And so far, we have not talked to any females here. We're keeping it halal, brothers. Tayyib. Here, we're going to talk about somebody you're speaking to. Tayyib. So, if you are speaking to a single man, and you're talking about something they did in the past, tayyib, how would you say it? Fatahta al-balad, yani, this could even be a question the way you're phrasing it. Yani, fatahta al-balad, like did you bring victory or open up that land? And this is something for the past, for a single person. And if you're using the damir by itself, it would be anta. Excellent. Tayyib. If you're going to go with mudari', are you doing it currently? Right? Then you say taftahu. The ta here is not for ta'anis, it's for mukhatab. You're speaking to somebody. Tayyib. This is for one man who is present. You are speaking to them. Madi and mudari'. Tayyib. If you're speaking to two people, and now this is again mukhatib, yani they're there. You're not talking about somebody who's not there, and you are speaking to both of them directly in discussion of something they did in the past. Tayyib. How would you say? Fatahtuma. Tayyib. Antuma. You see the ma in the end. Antuma is your damir. Fatahtuma is your fi'l. Now, if you are speaking regularly, you don't have to say antuma fatahtuma. You can say fatahtuma, and you have already brought the damir in the fi'l itself. But now, just to be clear, in the Quran sometimes you will see, because the Quran is not a basic book, it's an advanced, beautiful kalam of Allah that all Arabic literature goes back to benefit from. It's the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not even makhluk. So many times there is an emphasis to show who did what without a doubt. And that's why damair are brought in places with af'al that damair may not even be necessary in. Tayyib. Now, if you're talking to somebody that's present, but you're talking about mudari', you're talking about the present tense, are you two doing this? Then you will say Taftahani. Taftahani. So here you're using the ta for the one who's mukhatib, you're using the alif and noon to show muthanna, to show dual sense. If you are mukhatib to a lot of men or a big group of mixed people, then you will say fatahtum. Fatahtum. Tum here is your damir that's connected with the fi'l here, which would be from antum. Again, if you drop the an, you see the tum that comes over here. But in mudari', then it will be taftahuna. Taftahuna. In mudari', the jam'a is shown with the waw and noon. Now, when we talk about ghaib, and we're talking about females, so this will be all female tenses. Tayyib. A couple of them will be the same as male when we talk about muthanna, and we're not getting into those kinds of differences in depth, but this will be in female tenses. In female tenses, if you're speaking to one female, hiya would be the damir for it, and if you use the fi'l, then it will be fatahat. Fatahat with the sukoon on the ta. Now, this is something that is unique to af'al, where you have sukoon as the i'rab of the last letter in a fi'l. You will not have that in asma. In asma, it doesn't end on a sukoon. And af'al do not end on being majroor. Even when we say taftahani, this is not majroor. That is only showing that this is muthanna. So jarh is something only taken by asma, and sukun is only taken by af'al. In this sense. Now, there may be some odd cases. For example, if we say Musa or Isa, it seems to end on alif maksura with the sukun, but that's actually not the case. The actual case with those aren't Arabic names. Those are Ajami names that have come into the Arabic language, and that's why they're mamnu min sarf, they're mabni, because they are not Arabic names. Asma in the Arabic language don't end on sukun. Tayyib. So, when we go to two females, then how will you say it?
فتحتا.
Fatahata. Fatahata. And taftahan. Here you will see that it comes close with mudariya, but you see a difference in madi. Huma is going to stay huma, even though there is some ulama that have other khilaf on this. Fatahna is going to go for hunna. Yaftahna for the jam'a, and hunna for the damir, if you're talking about a lot of females. Fatahti, now we are mukhatib. Before Abdurrahman says anything on my other, say it. When you are mukhatib to a female, inshallah a mahram to you, then fatahti will be you're speaking from anti. Taftahina. Taftahina, you are mukhatib in mudariya to a female. And if you see a lot of Arabs when they speak, they don't use these types of changes when they're speaking.
What does mukhatib mean?
When you're speaking to somebody, you are.
Is the ya and the ta, are they interchangeable or no?
What do you mean?
Like could you, like anti yaftahin?
No,
You can't?
No.
It's just-
those are in place for a purpose. You will see the differences for the different tenses. Many times the ya and the ta is the only thing that tells you the difference between where you're speaking to. Okay. Then when you get into two females that you are mukhatib to, fatahtuma and taftuhani. Taftahani for muthanna, for females, antuma the same. Tayyib. Then you get into jama', a huge group of women. Then you say fatahtunna, the noon bishadda, and in mudariya you will not have the shadda. Taftahna, and then antunna. When you get into then yourself speaking. Now, I know the camera probably won't come out very clear, but inshallah we'll make it clear. This tense doesn't change between men and women. Not in asma, not in damair, and not in af'al. So when you say fatahtu, whether it's a woman speaking or a man speaking, it will stay the same. This is first person. When you are saying you did something. Aftah or aftahu, this is mudari' for man or woman. And ana will be used as the standalone or munfasil dhamir here. Tayyib. Fatahna, this will be we opened or we made victorious. And this will be the same for a group of men speaking or a group of women speaking or mixed. Naftahu, this is going to be the mudari' for a group who is speaking about themselves presently doing that action. And nahnu will be the standalone or munfasil damir for a huge group speaking. Now, what's important about these is that you have to make these second nature. And you have to be able to roll these off your tongue when you're speaking regularly. You can't have to go back and think, taftahani, it is mudari'a, it is this. No, you have to practice it. Now when you understand how they work, as your homework, inshallah ta'ala, go back and use these in conversation. Try to speak to somebody speaks Fusha especially, then sit down with them and make sentences for yourself. Write them out yourself, memorize them, and then use them in a conversation. Use all of these tenses in conversations so that you can get used to using them. Then what you should do, inshallah ta'ala, like what we used to have to do in homework, but inshallah for you, I'm leaving it up to you, is take 50 af'al. Find 50 af'al in a dictionary, online, and don't do ruba'i, because then you're going to get confused, and try to find thulati mujarrad on this wazn, and make all of these tenses. And try to get used to changing them and using them with different af'al, with different actions. And inshallah ta'ala, this will be the end of our these series of durus. From next week, inshallah, we will have the vocab section begin, where we're going to be inshallah memorizing vocabulary, and we're going to be having more conversation. The basis of nahu, from asma, from af'al, from majrurat, from mansubat, from marfu'at, you have it. From tawabi'. If you missed the dars, we have videos. Right? Now what is upon the student of knowledge is to memorize them and use them. You know, every one of you should know all the marfu'at, all the mansubat, all the majrurat, all the tawabi' by heart. Every one of you should have the basics of how to make jam'a taksir, mudhakkar salim, muannas salim. We covered that. Every one of you should be able to understand fi'l mudari', fi'l madi, fi'l amr, fi'l mustaqbil, and how they change. Right? Every one of you should be able to make some level of i'rab, looking at all of what you have learned, inshallah ta'ala. Now the next step is for you to use it. Take the Quran, take out an ayah, write down, think what you think the i'rab is. If you don't understand, inshallah, bring it to me, we'll sit down, look at it together. If not, go get yourself a Darwish or Nuhas or one of the books of i'rab of Quran. And then, inshallah, if you don't have them, we have some in the maktaba. You can look through them, and you can see if you were right in your i'rab. And if you're wrong, why were you wrong? And benefit and learn and grow in that, inshallah ta'ala. And then the next thing, this is how to practice your nahu. Next is to speak. You know, every language that's not kullu lughat muhtajan mumarasa. Yani every language is in need of practice. So speak with people in Fusha. Don't get into Ammiya. Don't waste your time with a gullak A and that kind of stuff. You will not find in the Quran. Go to the pure Arabic and use it. Have conversations. If not with anybody else, with each other. Make mistakes. Don't worry about mistakes. But practice. And then, you know, next thing, all you have to do is memorize vocab now. When you have the grammar, you just need vocab. You plug it in, you're good to go. You know how to change them now. If you don't practice, inshallah, you will get it. So we will have class next Tuesday, inshallah. But it will not be going over the rules of nahu anymore. Rather, it will be memorizing lists of words and using them, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakumullah khair.
إلا تنصروه فقد نصره الله